There we go. So we talked about this, everything that was in here pretty much, right? So what I want to do today, this is my plan. I will talk a little bit more about this section, some more facts about like how to reduce the amount of interest you pay, the advantages of owning, the advantages of renting, and later on we're also going to talk about the disadvantages. And then we're going to pause and write an AC. It's going to be a Google form, right? So we write that AC. It's a Google form, multiple choice for most of them. And then there's one short answer. So if you pay attention today, you should be able to answer that short answer question as well. And yesterday, right? Both days obviously are important. So let's jump right into page 5. Page 5 in our booklets. It says extra notes there. Okay. All right, so it says there, state and explain how you can lower your monthly payments. Okay. What could you do to have a smaller monthly payment? That's basically what they're asking you. And we're talking about a mortgage, right? So let's say you're about to buy a house, you're about to sign the papers, but before you finalize it, there are a few things you can do to make the payment lower. Once you're locked in, it is what it is, right? So we will look at the formula first and foremost, right? So the formula for payment, if you wanted to calculate your payment, you would use the formula we always use, right? So you take the price of the house minus any down payment. Then you take a table rate and divide it by 1,000, right? You multiply it by that because that is given by a chart which has a blended payment with interest and principal. So this is your formula here. And I also want to clarify or add that this table rate, what did you use to come up with that table rate? You use the interest rate, right? And amortization, right? It's the interest rate and then the amortization that gave you that table rate in the first place. So really, if you think of the formula, there are 4 pieces that influence and affect it. The price of the house, the down payment you have, the interest rate, as well as the amortization. So 4 things that influence your payment. Now, the price of the house, I don't like to say that you can like lower the price of the house, right? Because you are gonna look for a specific type of house. So we're like, let's say you want a 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, and an attached garage in a specific area. So you kind of already know what the price is that you're looking for. So I don't like to talk about that because I don't know, it's sometimes it's not realistic to say, oh, just look for a cheaper house. Well, if that's the one you want, that's the one you're going for. But there are 3 things that remain that you can uh, adjust. It's within your power to change to a certain degree. Okay, so the first one would be the down payment. So you can increase the down payment. Okay, if you were to increase your down payment, you would effectively bring down the amount you borrow, right? You would bring down the amount you need to borrow, which will automatically result in a smaller payment comparatively, right? So let's say you have 30 grand sitting in your checking account or savings. You would like to use, yes, Skaden, go ahead. Yeah, what page is this? Page 5. Page 5. Okay. Yeah, page 5. All right. So you increase your down payment. So let's say you have 20 grand in the bank, or 30, let's say. You would like to use 20 grand for your down payment, but then you're thinking, wait a minute, like if I make a bigger down payment, my payment will go down. So you might take the extra 10 grand or whatever. Which, by the way, I'm going to tell you this, just somebody's mic is on, maybe turn it off. Uh, I'll tell you this. If you have money saved up, so let's say here, I'll my calculator on the screen here. So let's say you're looking for a house that's $350,000, right? You technically need to put down 5%. So point times 0.05%, what would that be? 17,500. That's how much you need to have as a down payment to be approved for a mortgage, almost universally, unless the government changes something, right? If you have the 17,500, that's great, but don't use all of your savings to pay as much as you can. And this is why. Let's say you have 40 grand saved up, right? Let's say you worked hard, you saved up, you did well, 40 grand. Put down the 17,500 or put down 20 grand, let's say. Leave the 20 grand, the other 20 you have, leave it in your checking, because when you start owning a home, there are a lot of expenses at first that come your way that were unexpected. And so you have like a rainy day fund to pay off any unexpected repairs that might come your way. Okay? And this is why, because technically, let's say you're after a year or two being in the house, you're like, you know what, I never touched this. What should I do with it? You can still put it towards the bank will allow you to pay off quite a bit on top of your monthly payments. So you can still at any time go to the bank, say, hey, the 20 grand that I never used, I want you to put it towards what I owe. And they will take the entire 20 grand and bring down your mortgage by 20 grand. Okay, so you can still do that, but once you give it to them, because you want that large down payment, you cannot take it back, right? Like you're stuck now. You gave it all away. Well, it's towards the house, a good thing, but you also need cash flow, right, to make repairs. And by the way, I told you this yesterday, right? Let's see on the chat. If you need 5% down, right? What percentage on top of that should you be saving up for additional costs when purchasing a home that will come with the purchase of a home? I said 5% for down, and approximately how many percent on top of that? Put it in the chat if you remember. See if you were listening. Anyone, someone, come on. Nobody? I think that you have a number in mind, and maybe I just said it briefly, but you technically need 2 to 3% on top of the 5. That's what I said, like that's a good estimate, right? So let's say you buy that house for 350,000. Instead of multiplying it by 5%, you should be multiplying it by 8%, right? So you're 5% for down payment and the 3% for costs that will come with buying a home. And we'll talk more about that. So really you need 28 grand saved up. Let's say around number 30 grand saved up for that particular house, just to make sure you cover all of the expenses that come with it. Okay. Anyway, so increasing the down payment will effectively lower your monthly payments, right? Another thing you can do is, if you look at the interest rate, is shop for a lower interest rate. Okay. And here I will say something that's very important, because sometimes it seems like it's very irrelevant. 2% versus, let's say you go to a different bank and it's 1.85%. You might think, that's almost nothing, right? Right? Could mean, write this down, could mean thousands in savings. Okay? It's thousands of dollars in savings in the long run. So when you're dealing with a large sum like a mortgage, getting a lower interest rate is worth it, right? And I will also tell you this, a lot of banks give you cash back. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but some banks like TD Bank will say, if you sign a mortgage with us, we'll give you $3,000 cash back. And they literally give you $3,000 in your checking account if you sign up with their a mortgage with them. If you sign it with them, they'll give you that cash. It happens. So just look out for that. That's a pretty good deal, right? And the other thing you can do is you can increase the amortization. Increase amortization, so take longer to pay off. In other words, take longer to pay off. Right? You take longer to pay off. So there are 30-year mortgages out there. Most of the time it's 25, but there are 30. There's also, when I bought my first house, this was probably 12, 15 years ago, there was a 40-year mortgage, 40. I don't think those exist at this time, but you could do that. So this is the kicker though, pay close attention. It might be tempting to do that, to say, hey, I want to take 40 years to pay it off because then my payment is a lot smaller, but you pay a lot more interest overall. That's why banks are very, very willing to give you a longer amortization, because they still make more money at the end of that. Okay? That's how they make money. Okay, next. State and explain advantages of owning a home. Okay? So the biggest one I want you to write down is you build equity. Right? Equity, you heard me talk about that yesterday, and this is what I will say to it. As you pay off your mortgage, and I just go MTG there, right? Your mortgage, at the same time as you're paying off, the value of the home increases. Okay? The difference, sorry, I will start here. The difference of the two is equity. Right? So always think about it that way. It doesn't happen with a car. Car loses its value, so that you do not build equity with a car. As you're paying it off, it also loses its value. So it's not equity. There's no equity there. But with real estate in particular, or collectibles, right? Anything like that, right? You buy it, you get your mortgage, right? You pay it off. So your remaining balance will go down, but the value will go up. So I don't know if you can see that. And so it's like a wedge. The more time goes by, the more equity you build. So it's like, it's not just like you're paying off, it's also at the same time increasing in value. And that is equity. And listen carefully to this, because equity is a very powerful tool that you can use. Maybe your parents are already doing so, and you know that they've mentioned it, but you probably weren't so aware. But you can use that equity to buy cars. You can use that equity to make like major renovations in the home. That's what people do quite often. So here's how it works. After, let's say you buy your house, and after 5 years you have to renew, right? You have to sign again for another 5 years if you wish to do so. your bank will say, Mr. or Miss, you have $50,000 worth of equity. Meaning, if you were to sell the house today, right, and paid off your mortgage, you still would have 50 grand left over, right? They will say, hey, you want to buy a car? You want to, buy a boat, a motorcycle, whatever. And they will give you the interest rate that you get for your mortgage, which is a lot lower than getting a car loan at a bank, right? So equity is a very powerful tool, but don't overuse it because you don't want to just keep on adding to your mortgage and never get it down to zero. Okay, so you got to be careful there. So equity is very powerful. Remember that. I know, like, if you ever buy a house, it's going to come in handy and it will be mentioned as you pay off. Okay. Next, another advantage is payments stay the same. So once you sign that 5-year contract, your payment will stay the same. It won't go up every year. If you rent, right, rent pretty much goes up every year. So an advantage of this is like, you know what, for 5 years for sure, if you sign, you're guaranteed to have the same payment. Okay. Another advantage is you can renovate, and I would strongly encourage you to write some of these down because I want you to be specific. You can renovate and upgrade anytime. You don't need to ask your landlord to paint the walls. I once was at an apartment, and just to paint the walls, I had to ask for permission, right? You can't take down any walls. You can't, put any significant, structure in or make changes. You cannot if you rent, but you can when you own, right? You have the ability to have a yard, and here you have to be specific if you actually buy a house. If you buy a condo, you probably don't, right? So there you just have to be specific. And the last one I'm going to add here is, this is huge for a lot of people. You may have pets. You may own pets because it's your place. You get to have cats, dogs, whatever you want, right? You can have them in there. Nobody can tell you otherwise. When you rent, a lot of buildings, they have a no pet policy, right? Which is huge for a lot of people, right? Like, a lot of us have pets and we just want them with us, right? So you can't always do that if you're renting, right? So there's that. State and explain disadvantages of owning a home. In the chat, okay, I need some of your feedback. Like, what would you say would be a major disadvantage, or you would consider as a disadvantage, a downside of owning a home? I think you can do this one. So I'll give you 15 seconds and just type in, what would you say is a disadvantage of owning a home? You can do that. It costs more. Alora, I know what you're trying to say, but how so? How would you say it costs more? If you don't mind putting down, like, why would you say it costs more, just to be a bit more specific? Okay. Jackie, you have to pay the water bills. Yes. Having to clean the whole house. Okay. Yeah. You have a bigger place to maintain. Yeah. Alan's saying gotta mow your lawn. Yes. So there's extra work required. There's maintenance, right? Anything else? Ah, there you go, Matthew. If something breaks, it comes out of your pocket. That's right. That's right. And those like, if your washer and dryer go, right, it's on you if you own a house, right? You got to replace that. You got to pay for it. It's very costly, right? Yeah. Okay. So insurance, right? Like Matthew, I'm just gonna say yes to that, and also just the fact that you need to pay for insurance, which later on you will see is costly. Yeah, way to go, guys. Like, is there more? If you have more, just bring it. Okay. Well, that was very good. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and I will mention some of those in the bullets that I'm gonna bring in here. Okay. So yes, the first one would be repairs and maintenance. Okay. You are responsible for any costs associated with regular upkeep. Yeah. So, what are some of those things? Filter replacement on your furnace, right? Appliance breakdown, um, light bulbs, leaking faucets, anything like that. Mowing the lawn, shoveling snow, etc. Right? So all those things you're responsible for. You know what? Even just buying shovels, right? Shovels are not cheap, right? And they break down on a regular basis. You got to get new ones every once in a while. Every time you go, right, to Canadian Tire to buy anything, to repair anything, it always costs you 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, right? Like you need to repair the little things. Sometimes it's a doorknob, right? You're responsible for absolutely everything. You can't just go to your landlord and say, hey, this broke, can you fix it? So yes, absolutely. Um, I pay, and this is not in here, but I pay every year or two, I pay a technician to come in and check out my air conditioner and my furnace because I don't want that to break down. Do not wait for things to break down, right? If your furnace goes and it's minus 40, you call any of those plumbers or the heating and cooling guys, they're booked. They're booked for days, right? So then you're in trouble. Okay. Anyways, uh, the other one would be, and I think Jackie said it, or someone that you pay for water. Yeah, you pay all bills. Okay. These can fluctuate like vary. I will say that vary depending on use, right? This is big. If it's really cold, right? Like my house right now, my heating bill is very high, right? Because I'm using it extensively to heat the home. Electricity, if I use space heaters, anything like that, AC in the summer, it's using a lot more electricity. I pay for that. As I use more, I'm gonna pay more. When you live in an apartment, for the most part, you pay a fixed price and water is often included as well as electricity, right? So that's included, so you don't have to worry about using less or using more, anything like that. You don't have to. But so that's a downside for owning a home. And the last one would be you can say property taxes, right? You have to pay property taxes, and I will talk about insurance costs. Now, okay, actually, I'm going to scratch insurance. This is why. Because technically, you should be insuring your apartment as well. There is an apartment insurance that you can buy. So it's not unique to this. It is a lot more for a house, but you can't say you pay insurance. That's why it's not a good idea to own, right? So I'm going to scratch that there. All right. Now, we're going to take a break here. I'm going to give you the AC right now to work on. And then we're going to, once you're done your AC, okay, some of you are going to be done sooner than others. I want you to go to page 6, okay? That's right on the back side of this. So we'll do AC first, then work on page 6 to 8, okay? I want you to be comfortable with mortgages. I want you to be able to read the question and not just expect the same scenario over and over. I want you to read carefully and see like what are they asking me to do, okay? As well. And this is something that just came to me today. Maybe it's a good idea for this unit to just have a piece of loose leaf as your study sheet, okay? So you will be adding formulas to it. You'll be adding, disadvantages, advantages of owning a home. And then when you're almost done the unit, right? Then you transfer that over to just a small section on your study sheet, the one you're going to be using for the exam. That way you're not, messing it all up or whatever. So for now, just stick with a piece of loose leaf. Just add what you think you need to add, and then later we'll just make a compact entry into our study sheet. Okay, that's going to be my suggestion to you. So I'm going to pause the recording here. I've also, I'm going to post the key right after. That's what I was going to say. I also posted your